The Language and the Relationships Between Thoughts and Word by Sarah Boden. This thesis will present the relationship between thoughts and language, starting with the analysis of the Israeli linguist book written by Guy Dutcher's Thought Through Language Glass. The research addresses the issues of how cultural factors affect the conceptualization and the form of communication. The author presents an interesting study on color, introducing the Geiger color heresy, mathematics and physics born in the end of the 18th century. His work was recognized only at the end of the 17th as one of the largest and most important contributions to linguistic study. It showed that the way in which each culture describes the world is not arbitrary, but it follows the same pattern which seems almost anatomically intrinsic to the human being. In his book, the Israeli author states the linguistic relativism of Sapir and Worf, towards which Dutcher does not spare criticism, particularly on the argument that the speakers of a language would be limited precisely by the language spoken in the ability to understand and express certain concepts. The dichotomy between nature and culture has been on for a couple of centuries. The advocates of culture support the thesis that word is what our knowledge requires us to see. For the advocates of nature, the word is what we actually see. Dutcher's thesis is that the language influences the way we see the world just as much as the word affects the way we use language. Analyzing the connection between thoughts and speech, we will go deep to understand the translation process that takes place when thought is transformed into word. This flow passes as internal movement through a series of stimuli, getting through different stages before being formulated into words. There are two aspects of language: its internal aspect, meaningful and semantic, and its external appearance of phonetics and need. To be aware of the external language, the child begins with a word, then connects two or three. Shortly after, goes from the simple oration to more complicated sentences, and finally arrives to achieve a consistent language that consists of a series of compositions. As for the meaning, the first words of a child are like complete sentences. The structure of a language does not simply reflect the thoughts. The thought undergoes many changes to become language. It is not that in a simple expression, language finds its reality and its form. Interesting study by the psychologist Piaget on child development has shown that the child uses relative clauses even long before he or she understands the structures of these syntactic forms. As they say, grammar precedes logic. Among adults, the divergence between the semantic and phonetic language is even more pronounced. The concept of Goldstein leads to a thesis that the inner speech is not really language, but an evolutionary effect or activities of the thought expressed in words. Piaget, with his study regarding the area of the inner thought, was the first to focus the attention of the child's egocentric speech, which is one of the most difficult to investigate. Speaking of language in this context, we cannot avoid to mention current fact. The case of an indigenous community of Panama, presented in my work, has the purpose of breaking those communication boundaries that every more often depart people and communities. The tribe, called Cunanega, has been living a reality of conflict for more than 15 years. The right to basic services, such as administration for drinking water, are unfortunately denied to these people. Also, the placement of the main city waste dump, just 300 meters from their settlement, has increased the already existing tension. The tribe has settled in this area, that is 1 hour drive from Panama City, in 1985, thanks to the grant of the Panamanian government. The community demands answers and action that do not seem to be understood by the current government. The language, in this specific case, become an obstacle very difficult to overcome.